MSU's Office of K-12 Outreach, bringing innovation and best practices to educators across Michigan, the U.S., and the world.
My name's Amy Henry. I work with the Michigan Department of Education as an education consultant. I'm in the Office of Improvement and Innovation, and I'm in the School Improvement Unit specifically working with the statewide systems of support. So we work to support the priority and focus schools around the state. So one of the priorities at the state of Michigan is to make sure that everyone understands that MTSS and school improvement are not two separate bodies of work. The work of MTSS is meant to be embedded right within that school improvement process. You can take the language and put it right into your plan. The work of MTSS should be the work of your school improvement plan. Michigan's definition of MTSS is an integrated, multi-tiered system of support that's really focused on your instruction, your intervention, and your assessment. And it's really meant to meet the needs of the academic achievement of a student, but also the behavioral health of a student. You often see that triangle and there's a line dividing it right down the middle. And that line can stand for a few different things, but most commonly you'll hear that the one side of the triangle is talking about academics and the other is talking about that behavioral health. And we want to be able to see that student as a whole student rather than looking at just, oh, this is how they're doing in math or this is how they're doing in reading. We want to be able to look at every aspect of that student. The number one predictor of academic achievement is academically engaged time. So when we address that full student, we're able to get at the factors that maybe we don't see from a test that we're giving around reading or math. So in our state, we've really had this really tight focus around the achievement gap and what we're seeing with our bottom 30% and our top 30% and this huge distance between the two. And when we talk about the practices of MTSS, we're talking about hitting every student that walks in our door. We're talking about there not being an achievement gap. We're talking about leveling the playing field so that every student has access to the type of instruction that they need. We're talking about students not being behind. We don't want to see our students 2 and 3 years behind. We want to see them at benchmark. And when we're able to come in and identify their areas of need, we're able to provide instruction based on that area of need. So that student won't be left behind. That student won't be so far behind their peers that they're unable to catch up. We'll continue to see 1 year, 2 years, possibly 3 years of growth in that 1 year time because we're going to target the areas of need for our students. So we're addressing every student in the classroom, whether it be the high achiever or the low achiever or the right on par achiever. We're going to hit each one of their levels, and we're going to be sure that they're challenged and they're engaged in their own education. So one of the most common misconceptions around MTSS is that it's a way of intervening for students who are low performing, and that is so far from the truth because MTSS is not an intervention. It's not an intervention program. MTSS is best practice around instruction for our students, and it's meeting the needs of all students. The student that's above benchmark, the student that's on benchmark, and the student that's below benchmark. So we have to be very clear when we're working with people to make sure that they don't have RTI time or MTSS time and say that they're actually implementing MTSS because that's not the case. You can't have a block of 30 minutes where you work with low performing students and say I'm doing MTSS because that's not MTSS. MTSS is for all students. So with MTSS, the idea is that you're meeting the needs of all your students in your classroom. So say I am a kindergarten teacher, which we've seen this in many kindergarten classrooms. I've got students coming to me with all different levels and they need all different kinds of support. And I might find that maybe only 50% of my kids are at benchmark when they walk in my door. Thinking about that in a fiscal way, we know that we can't provide the supports to 50% of our kids that are individualized. We're not going to be able to do that. We just don't have the resources at this time to do that. So when we see those types of numbers, we need to understand that the supports we need to provide need to be embedded into our Tier 1 instruction, which is our just general gen ed teacher providing instruction in the classroom day to day. And the cool thing about that is there's been this huge push around universal design for learning and differentiated instruction and all of these different strategies that are really best practice strategies. And those get at the heart of MTSS, which is to meet the needs of all of those students. If the Tier 1 instruction isn't meeting the needs of those students to begin with, then you're not going to see that Tier 2 or Tier 3 is ever effective. We've tracked data, we've followed kids, we've got 10 years worth in one district we worked with, and we followed these kids, and when they were at Tier 1 instruction, or Tier 2 instruction, and then moved into Tier 1, and then kind of lost, I mean it's kind of a weird way to put it, but they lost those supports, they would cycle in and out of Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction. They would continually go in and out because the problem wasn't at the Tier 2 or Tier 3 level. The problem was at the Tier 1 level, and we have to beef up that instruction. We can't change the students that are walking in our door. We can't change what we get. We have to change what we give. So we have to change how we're providing our instruction and how we're meeting the needs of those kids. If 50% are below benchmark, that means our instruction needs to be beefed up so that 80% can get at benchmark. And we have to do that in the Tier 1 universal level. I think about what our teachers need when they're doing this work. They need supports. They need to know what to do. What do you do with a third grade reader that walks into a 12th grade English class? How do you provide supports for them? They need that leadership support. They need training. They need coaching. They need to have job-embedded practices that are put on their plate that they can just take out. They need to have tools and resources. And MTSS is that. It's the whole idea of being able to pull from an arsenal of places and being able to provide those multi-levels of support that those students might need that walk in your classroom.